live right now. It's been so long since I've done this. It's been so long since I've done this. Excellent connection. Let's open up a private tab. YouTube/MetalX1000. So, you can now put people in timeout for different lengths of time. No, don't worry about that. Got it. Oh, hi, Chris. Okay, someone is watching. Okay. I don't have anything planned for what I'm going to talk about. It's Tuesday morning. My wife and kids go to church on Tuesday mornings for a Bible study thing, and this is usually when I would record videos. And I'm just not in the mood to record videos. I have lots of topics to record about, but I'm just not in the mood to do it. So I thought, you know what? I've been wanting to do a live stream forever, and the only time I ever have time to do it is Tuesday mornings, which seems like a horrible time to stream. I would think that if I did it now, no one would watch, but there's already, 5 people currently, it looks like, in the room. And so I just thought I'd do a video, just start talking. You guys have any questions, you can ask me. Let's see. Let me send a link to this to some people in my chat room so that they know that I'm streaming, because I might get some people from there in here. Live stream. They're in here. Oh, that's me talking. And paste that in here. It's funny, it looks like the thumbnail for this is from last time I did live stream. Or no, maybe that's my banner on my YouTube page. Let's see. Someone said something. I'd like to ask you about, where do you work as a professional? And what is your job? Okay, yes. So I don't do tech work. I don't do anything computer related for work. I work for a fire department. In fact, by the end of this month, I'll reach 20 years with the fire department. And in the past, I tried to help them with computer stuff, and I just got burnt lots of times. Back in '09, I know that was a long time ago, that's a little bit after I started doing YouTube videos. I had torn my bicep. I was on light duty. I did a whole bunch of computer stuff for the department. The chief loved me. They hired a new IT guy. I disagreed with the IT guy, and the chief went from loving me to wanting to fire me because I disagreed with this guy in the direction we were going. Ever since then, so 15 years now, our computer systems have just gotten worse and worse and worse. And I've been asked by different chiefs as time goes on to help out, and my response has been no, because every time I do, and there have been a number of times I have, that basically I do a bunch of work and then they end up going a different route because that's what the IT guy wants. And by IT guy, I mean we have a couple of IT guys, and all they ever do is basically buy software and hire outside companies to take care of stuff. I don't think they actually do anything themselves. And the software we get is just worse and worse every time we get something new. So I, again, don't work in IT, and people ask why. And the reason is because I like computers. I like programming. I like making scripts. I like writing video games. I like doing it because I like doing it. And if I did it for work, I would go crazy. And a little bit I've tried to do it at work. It's just aggravating. So yeah, I think it's great that there's people who work in computers, obviously. I think a lot of people who actually work in computers aren't very good with computers, and they do it because for the money, and there's just a small select group of people who actually do it because they love it. And I've known a lot of people very, very smart with computers. Then they start getting jobs in business, and their minds go the opposite direction because they start getting, fed this information that, like, this is how we do it and we have to do it. I actually watched a video the other day about this guy who was self-taught with computer stuff, and he was talking about complaints that people who are self-taught with computers get from people who are went to school for it, and I always look the other way around. I think people who go to school for computer stuff, I know it's bad. I look down on them because for multiple reasons, but they're fed this book stuff and they always overcomplicate stuff. You ever talk about to someone who's been formally trained in computers, it's like, I could do something and get it done. They're like, well, you can't do it that way because it's not going to scale. Well, I'm not Facebook. I don't have billions of users. Most companies are very small with maybe 20 employees, 100 employees, 200 employees. You can have thousands of employees. You don't have to worry about scaling. I had a friend who very knowledgeable on Linux. In fact, he's the one that got me using Debian years ago. And he's still a very knowledgeable guy, but as soon as he started working in computers with these companies, all of a sudden he's using, Microsoft Outlook and stuff like that. He's like, oh, well, other options don't scale like Microsoft's Outlook would scale. It's like, well, it's email. It's email. It's not complicated. It's literally text files being passed to a server into a folder or file, depending on how it's set up. Scaling, how big is your company? Again, if you're a huge multi-billion-dollar company, yeah, maybe you have to worry about scaling. Most companies don't. Oh, hello, someone's from India. Hello. So, I got 11 viewers. So again, for those of you who just joined us, I wasn't planning on doing a live stream today. Tuesday morning's my day to record videos, and I'm just not in the mood to. So I thought I'd hop on here and do a live stream and talk about stuff. What are your views on FOSS, as in free and open source software? I think all software should be free and open source. I try to limit any proprietary software I use. Now, we don't live in a perfect world. To truly go 100% free and open source software is impossible because, as we all know, our desktops and laptops and our phones, the chips on them have proprietary software embedded in them that there's really not much you can do. But in general, I try to keep my systems with, at the very least, open source software. In fact, my laptop, I don't think my laptop has any proprietary drivers on it. I know my desktop, I needed NVIDIA drivers. There is a program in the repositories for Debian that will check at least the applications you have installed on your system through the package manager. It's the Virtual Richard Stallman. So I think it's VRMS. You run that and it will tell you if you have any proprietary or non Richard Stallman improved software on your system, but I think it only checks what's installed through your repositories. So if you're installing things outside of the default repositories for your system, I'm not sure if it finds those. But I try to only stay with the Debian repositories. Very rarely do I go outside of those because you're just asking for trouble, but occasionally you have to. But I still try to stay with, again, at least open source software. And there is a difference between free and open source software and just open source software. Technically, the GPL license would be free and open source because it's a license that protects and it says this has to stay open. If something's under a certain BSD license, and there are different BSD licenses, as I found out when I asked Richard Stallman a question and he yelled at me and never really answered my question, but most BSD licenses are not technically free licenses. They're only open source because they give the option for sub-licensing, meaning you can take it and make changes and not have to share those and it will become proprietary. And I don't like that, but I have no problem using something that's under a BSD license myself because technically I could take it, make a change, and then release it under a GPL license because it's a one-way compatibility. I can go from the BSD license to a GPL license, but not the other way around. Well, not too long ago, maybe a year or two ago, I saw a post. I think it was talking about X screensavers. So on Linux systems, if you have a screensaver, there's a good chance it's using the X screensaver package. And I'm not sure what license that was under. Let's see. Software X screensaver wiki. Usually it will tell us the license on the Wikipedia page. And it's an MIT license. And if I did too long, didn't read licenses, and I click on this, and I go MIT, it's probably going to allow sub-licensing. So here, Commercial use, modification, distribution, sublicensing. So, to the best of my knowledge, something like the MIT license would, and don't quote me on this because I don't know a whole lot about the MIT license, it would be a one-way compatibility with a GPL license. You can go from the MIT license to the GPL license, but you can't take something that's under a GPL license and go to the MIT license. Some people would say that would make the GPL more restrictive, but the restriction is the fact that you can't restrict the software, which I think is backwards thinking. To me, something under a GPL license is more free and less restrictive than a BSD or an MIT license. Anyway, going back to the story of the X Screensaver software. Oh, by the way, is my audio okay? Where's my live stream here? Yeah, let me know if my audio is okay because I didn't really check it, but it looks good on the screen here. Anyway, X Screensavers. It's under an MIT license. I guess some people took it and repackaged it and released it under the GPL license. And I saw a post where the creator of the X Screensavers packages, if I remember correctly, was complaining about this. You can't complain about it if you released under a license that specifically allows that. Now, if you released under the GPL license and someone repackaged it and relicensed it, yeah, you have every right to be upset. But if you specifically pick a license that allows people to take it and relicense it under another license, you can't complain when people do that. Oh good, the audio is fine. So we're talking about, so again, for people, because now I'm up to 14 viewers. So I wasn't planning on doing a live stream today. Just thought I'd do it though, and so I'm just talking. And if you have any questions, go ahead and ask them in the chat. Someone's asking if I use a VPN. No, I've never actually used a VPN. I really don't see the point in most cases because if I'm connecting, I connect to my house through SSH. I have two computers always open up through SSH that I can tunnel in and then access all my other computers. I have two. In case one goes down, I can always access the other. I also have an nextcloud server, but I use certificates, security, so it's already encrypted. I really don't have a need for a VPN. There has been times where I will SSH tunnel and go with my browser through a tunnel, but the information I'm sending on almost all websites, including my website and my Nextcloud server, all use HTTPS, so they're encrypted. So yeah, an ISP or someone on my network might know I'm going to a server, but they can't see what I'm seeing. So unless I'm trying to really hide what I'm doing, like where I'm going, which I'm not really concerned about, I don't do that. But I can see the use of VPN. I hate all the VPN commercials on YouTube. It's like they're all misleading on what VPNs do, and they all basically encourage breaking the law because they talk about accessing, restricted media that's restricted in your country because you can go pretend like you're in another country. That's technically breaking the law. It's not criminal law, but when you sign up for these services, either through your internet service provider or Netflix or those, you agree to a contract, and it's just like a software contract. It is legally binding. Are you going to get in trouble for it? Probably not. Do I care? No, I don't use those services, and the way I get my movies and videos lots of times isn't a legal way of doing it, but I just find it funny that all these YouTube people are advertising it, and one of their highlights on why to use a VPN is to do something that's basically illegal. You're breaking a contract, a legally binding contract. But no, I've never used a VPN. If I ever need to, I can SSH and tunnel through my network. I've done videos on that before. There's other videos out there. Basically, you just, you connect through SSH and you open up a port, and then you just reverse tunnel through your network, and you tell your web browser, hey, use this port as a proxy. And then everything will go through your SSH server and come out of my house. So I'm not saying that VPNs are not a good thing. They are if you need them. I think lots of times people use them in ways that are unnecessary, like at work. At work, there's a VPN set up so that all the different fire stations, which someone asked earlier, I'm a firefighter, is my full-time job. All the fire stations in my department are all connected through VPNs, so they're all kind of there. And for file sharing, I guess. I really don't see the point of that. We should have a server set up that we can access to a web browser. We shouldn't be using regular file sharing. There's not a point to it. There has been security issues with it before. In fact, even now, our computer systems are just so messed up, and it is keep getting worse, and it's just decisions our IT guys are making. Recently, they changed from our desktop computers, which had locally installed copies of Windows 7, I think is what we were running for a while, with a copy of freeze ice something that basically is supposed to prevent you from making changes to the hard drive, which it didn't really prevent anything. Trust me, I can make changes to those hard drives if I wanted to, in multiple different ways. But it was a rather annoying system because most people, you make changes to the system when you reboot. It's like a fresh system, and it would also reboot randomly, well, not randomly, but every night for updates, which you might think, having the computer automatically reboot at 3 o'clock in the morning isn't a big deal, except for when you're a firefighter and you go out and you run a call in the middle of the night, you come back and you start a report, and halfway through your report, the system would reboot, and we would lose our reports. At least with the software we used to. We did recently go to web-based reporting system, so I guess if the system reboots then, at least something might be saved. You can log back in. But recently we switched from desktop computers running Windows 7 to, they got little like net boxes or whatever you want to call them, little tiny computers on the back of the system that boot into Windows, but then connect to a server and run a virtual machine of Windows 11 remotely, and it's absolutely horrible because there is, well, first of all, you got to log in twice, and then there's a delay on everything. And like if you need to watch a video for training, because we do online courses weekly, basically, well, they assign a few each month for us to go through, and you usually have to watch a video. Well, the audio and the video never line up because the audio is always delayed by a bit, or the video is delayed by a bit. It's out of sync, so you can't even watch a video on them, and it's just ridiculous. Someone asked, why do I use Debian? Well, my first year or two of using Linux, I distro hopped like most people do. Every month I was switching to a different one. Eventually I met my friend Daryl, and I was talking about him earlier. He really, really loved Debian, and eventually I got to the point where I was just like, okay, I like these distros, they're based on Debian. Why would I use something that's based on Debian when I could just use Debian? People, I really don't care what distributions people use in general, but it's just a lot of these distros like Ubuntu or Linux Mint, or my favorite out of the box distro is MX Linux. And so I keep that on a flash drive. And these are good if you need a system up and running with, a lot of stuff you already need. But for my installs, I want to install a minimal system and install what I need as I go. And all these systems are based on Debian. I can do whatever they do with Debian. I just have to set it up myself, but I don't have to worry about stuff I don't want installed that's already installed. So again, I like to start off with a lightweight system and then just install what I need as I go. Why would I pick Debian over something like Arch? And I'm not trying to start an argument here or a fight, because again, I think Arch is great as far as their documentation. I'm sure it's a great distribution. Reasons I like Debian over Arch, and I've said this before, is one, the main thing is packages, right? The default Debian repositories have way more packages than Arch. People will argue that's not true. Well, they're talking about using the AURs, which is basically a community repos. I don't trust that. I might as well be going and downloading things from random websites. Because my question is, if these programs in the AUR are secure and tested, why are they not in the default repositories? That's just my view. I'm sure that they maybe all are safe, but I just don't trust that. To get something into the Debian repositories takes a long process. I don't know what the process is to get stuff in the AUR, but if you need to go through a process that checks to make sure compatibility, stability, and you can trust the developers and the people creating the packages and the maintainers, if you're going through all that, why is it not in the default repositories? That's just my view. Yes, Arch probably has more software if you count those community-based repositories. I'd rather just go to the default repositories for Debian. I don't install a PPAs. I don't even know how those work, because once you install repositories outside of those repositories, you're just asking for trouble, in my opinion. Another thing I like about Debian is that it supports more architectures than most other distributions. For example, for a while I did run Arch on an ARM device. Every couple of months it would break, and I think the reason for this was because Arch does not support ARM. People will say, oh, it does, and they'll link me to a page. Well, that's not actually the Arch project. That's a side project someone else has going on, and I don't think it's as maintained as much, and that's why there were issues constantly. So although Arch will run on multiple architectures, which is true of basically all Linux distros, you can make them do it. Debian actually supports and has repositories for more distributions than I think, or more architectures than I think any other distro. So that's just why I like Debian. I like that it also has the three stages of repositories. You got unstable, testing, and stable. For servers, I use stable, but for my desktop systems, I use SID, which is unstable, and I have for years. Because I do want to make sure I have somewhat up-to-date software, but I understand Arch people are very, very big on having the latest and greatest, which is awesome if that's what you're into. I don't see a need to upgrade unless there's going to be new features or security issues that I need. Someone once pointed out to me, they're like, oh, this is years ago. They're like, here's an example. Debian, they're still using KD10 and KD12 has been out for over a year. I'm like, well, there's standards on what is considered stable. And I said to them, I said, what's so new in KD12 that you need it over 10? They're like, I don't know, but it's newer. It's 2 versions newer. What does that mean? But if that's important for you, you can go that route. Me, the latest, getting the absolute newest isn't necessarily important unless there's new features or a security update being pushed, which I'm going to get those security updates with Debian. So yeah. And I don't mean to compare, like, I'm not trying to put down Arch. The reason I'm comparing Debian to Arch is because if I didn't use a Debian-based distro, Arch would probably be my next choice. I hear lots of great things about Arch. I just like the repositories for Debian over Arch. Let's see. Audio is good. Let's see. Audio is fine. Will you make tutorials on how to install Debian? Actually, I've thought about that. Actually, a lot recently. One of the things is if I'm going to do the video, I'm not going to do it in a virtual machine because I want to show doing it on real hardware. And it takes a little more setup to set up a camera and point it at the screen. I hate pointing the camera at the screen. But I do want to do different videos on installing Debian different ways. And what I mean by that is just like a standard install using a USB or CD drive. I want to do net installs, but then also I like finding tricky ways to install operating systems, like make up scenarios where you don't have a flash drive, all you have is a network connection, because you can install Debian, or really any Linux distro, different ways. So like the Bootstrap. The Bootstrap is an application that basically will pull down a Debian file system for you. And I used to do my installs that way through, I always said Grillem, but GRML, which is a live distro that's Debian based. And basically you format your hard drive and then it's almost like a net install. It pulls it down, then you install bootloader and go. You can, if you have a system already running with any Linux distro and you have swap space, and let's say you have no physical hardware to put a new ISO on for installing Debian, you can actually unmount your swap space, do the Bootstrap, and install a minimal Debian distro to that new format that swap space as ext4 or whatever. Install Debian there using the Bootstrap, add it to your bootloader, reboot into that, delete your other partition, and then resize that partition. So you can actually install Debian that way. Another thing I've done in the past is, let's say you have a Ubuntu or some other Linux live CD, right? A CD, so it's not writable. And you want to install Debian, and you have a system that doesn't have an operating system on it, or already does, but you just want to wipe that out and install Debian. Something I've done in the past is you boot a live distro, right? So, and then you download a Debian net install ISO, which is like 10 megabytes, and you can flash it, you can copy that using something like DD to your internal hard drive. And when you reboot, it will boot that as if you're booting it off an external disk. And the thing is, it boots to RAM. So once you've booted into that, you can now wipe your hard drive that you just booted off of and install Debian there. So I like coming up with scenarios like that where it's kind of unrealistic, but like, let's say you're in a clinch and you don't have all the tools you have. So I want to do some videos on that. It's just, I just haven't done it yet, but I can do it. Oh, another thing people I've heard complain about is that if you have, if you're installing Debian, because Debian by default doesn't have wireless proprietary drivers on it, you need to install the drivers or copy files over to a USB stick for the install. I've never ever done that. So lots of times I've in the past have had computers that have Ethernet cables, and you can pretty much always boot off that. And then once you've installed, you can add the non-free repositories from Debian and install the Wi-Fi drivers that way. So that's something I've done a lot. Also, you could boot with another distribution. Like I said, I used to use the GRML or Ubuntu. You can basically do a bootstrap install of Debian from any Linux distro. And once you've downloaded the basic Debian file system, you can churroot into that before you reboot and install the wireless drivers while you're still in Debian or whatever, or sorry, Ubuntu or whatever distribution that has your wireless drivers. So that's another way I've done it. And then a third way I've done it without having to copy drivers to a USB drive is I have a USB hub here that that has Ethernet on it. So if I don't have Ethernet plug on my machine, I just plug that in, install the drivers, unplug it, and now I have Wi-Fi. I think it's great. The Debian has free and non-free repositories. That is a big deal. It may not be a big deal to you, but it is a big deal to some people. Like me, I want to make sure that I know if I'm installing, if what I'm installing is proprietary or not, or what licenses it has, and that is a big issue. And you may not think, but it could cost you millions of dollars. And I know people who it has. Quick story. Guy I knew, he's a Linux admin for some company, some oil company, right? And they dig for oil or something. I don't know all the details. They had one guy in their team install a bunch of, I want to say, CentOS or Red Hat, one of those, commercial Linux distributions. And they thought they had the proper license because for some of those you need to buy certain licenses. Well, it turns out they bought the wrong license for what they were doing. And they had an audit, and they had to audit all these servers and machines. And supposedly the audit cost millions of dollars, from what he told me. From that point on, they've been using Debian. because not even paying fines for having the wrong license, they just the audit, just the question of, are you running something you're not, can cost them millions of dollars. So they switch all their servers over to Debian. They use only the free repositories, and they don't have to worry it. And when they have office meetings, if anyone brings up anything about possibly switching to and using some sort of proprietary software like that, or even something that's open source that requires a license of some sort, open source, they go quiet, because if there's even a hint that they're doing something like that, they might have to do an audit that costs millions of dollars. So the fact that Debian breaks the repositories into free and non-free, and all you have to do is go into a text file and add non-free to a line and then refresh your package manager, and you'll be able to access things like proprietary Wi-Fi drivers. It just gives you that peace of mind if you're someone who's concerned about that. And yeah, as an individual user, it may not be a big deal to you, but if it's not, again, you just go in, you add that one line to the text file and refresh your package manager. Let's see how to install Debian. So I might do a video on that. Any section who wants to start home labbing? What do you mean home labbing? I don't know what that means. Like hardware stuff? I'm not sure. What's your views on BTRFS? Snapshotting with BTRFS versus... Okay. I have never used BTRFS. So I really don't have an opinion on it when it comes down to stuff like that. I use ext4. I do occasional monthly backups of parts of my system. I just tar certain directories up. And then every couple of months I do have a hard drive where I'll just clone my whole hard drive just to be sure. So I just boot into a live distro and copy it over. So yeah, I don't have an opinion on that. My buddy Daryl, who I've mentioned a few times, man, I'm really out of focus, aren't I? This webcam is horrible. Oh, someone says home lab hosting stuff from your home. Okay, I'll talk about that in a moment. But yeah, I don't know much about file systems. I know that ext3 came out, around the time I started using Linux. If you had a slower system, to use ext2 still, and then ext4 came out, and from my understanding, it's like I guess that's best of both worlds. I don't even know. You're getting into things I don't know about. Okay, home labbing. So running things from home. Okay, SSH. Do everything through SSH. It's the most secure way to do things. If you can do GUI stuff, you can run Xorg and X applications through SSH. It's kind of slow. I don't recommend it unless you really need to. Truth is, if you just know how to do everything from the shell, you can do everything through SSH. I mean, there's very little you need to do through a GUI interface when it comes to management. You can share files using SFTP or scopy. You can mount directories through SSH, and then you have full access to your system. And you can forward audio through if you need to. Just use SSH. That's my general thing. And I would use SSH for absolutely pretty much everything if I didn't have my wife, which I love my wife, but I don't expect her to SSH and stuff. So that's why I have a Nextcloud server. And a Nextcloud, I'm a little more concerned about it because when you come to running something on a web browser, okay, so I have Apache installed, and I keep that up to date. I try to keep Nextcloud up to date. But the thing is, now you have all these server-side scripts running, and if any one of them has a flaw in it, someone can get into your system. And that's a little scary to me. Where SSH, I know SSH is secure. There has been exploits in the past, vulnerabilities found, and I know that Debian's going to push any fixes right away, and everything's just through this tunnel. It's just like nothing's getting in this pipe, right? Where when you're running a web server and you're running Nextcloud, again, one file has a security flaw in it, it can open up your whole system. That being said, I still use Nextcloud. It is really good for calendar stuff and sharing files with my wife. I don't use Nextcloud Talk. I tried for a while. The issue is it doesn't allow for notifications if you don't have Google services installed on your device, which I do on my main phone, unfortunately. Which again, my desktop and laptop computers, I started saying earlier, pretty much all free and open source. My phone, I do have Google services almost completely because of Google Maps. That's a whole nother conversation though. But if I didn't need Google Maps, I could probably do without other Google services on there. But Nextcloud is great. Their Talk application isn't very good. I've actually just started using Element, which I don't host myself, but I find is secure because it's encrypted end to end. You have to actually generate keys. It does cause issues every once in a while where a key will get lost. Because I just use the web browser. I don't have the application installed on my desktop. I do have Element, when I said Element, Matrix server. I use Element application. I use the open source Element app from F-Droid on my device, on my phone, on my desktop. I just have the tab open all the time, and that's how I communicate with my wife, kids, and a few friends online. But Nextcloud is great. I've been meaning to do a video on installing that because a lot of tutorials on how to install it use either Docker files or Snap files or Flatpaks, which I am not a big fan of. I think that's laziness in programming mostly, and it causes extra bulk. I think there are times and places for it. I hate when there is an application I want that isn't in the repositories. I want to install it, and the developer's only option for you to install it is to use one of those. Installing Nextcloud without those is super easy. And I've been meaning to do a video on that. I have notes on it. It literally is just install Apache and a few other packages from your Debian repositories, download, uncompress this file, and then, create passwords and stuff. It's super simple, but no one ever shows tutorials on how to do that. At least most people don't. So I want to do a video on that. I can literally get a Nextcloud server up and running in 5 minutes. And Nextcloud is pretty cool. But besides that, SSH, and I have all my machines run Apache web server, and most of them are behind my firewall here at home, except for the Nextcloud one. and I I just secure it. You know, I just think SSH and a web server on all machines is just useful. Obviously, you don't want to put anything in a directory that people can access, but basically anything I put in my web directory on my computers is stuff that I consider public. Years ago, I was working at a fire station, and it was actually it was a fire station I worked at for like 10 years, but we actually shared that fire station with another department because it was right on the edge of our districts. And one day there was a guy there that wasn't normally there, that department that was there, oh, he's a hacker, you got to be careful. They're all worried about him, that he supposedly hacking all these systems. They all turn off their phones when he's around, ridiculous stuff. And he came in to my room, shows me a picture of my wife. He goes, "Is that your wife? Or is this your picture?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Secure your machine." And it was a picture from my web directory. I put it in there because I was sharing it with somebody. It's super simple. If someone's there with me and I go on to give them a file from my computer, instead of sending it to my phone and text it to them or whatever, or uploading online, I just go, "Here, just go to this URL on the same network and there's my file." So yeah, I left that picture in there, but it was a picture that I probably have up on Facebook or something anyway. He's like, "Secure your network." Well, I only put private or public things in those files. It's basically mostly for me to test stuff. Man, this camera is so horrible. See if it focuses. Sorry, I don't have a good webcam. I think that's a little bit better. I'm glad this camera doesn't have autofocus. I hate when people do videos and they have autofocus on, the camera's constantly going in and out of focus. I'd rather be out of focus all the time than be going in and out of focus. Yeah, I did have a setup once because I thought about doing live videos where I even talked about it, taking my nice camera and hooking it up through a video capture thing and using that. And I just didn't feel like doing that today, so I just grabbed this cheap little webcam I have sitting here. Someone's saying Nextcloud over VPN. So I don't see the point of that because, I mean, okay, I do see what they're saying because I use security certificates, so everything's encrypted that I do. He's saying put it through a VPN so that you don't have to worry about, the scripts that I'm talking about having flaws in them. And that would be one case. But the thing is, it's just like, I want to be able to access my Nextcloud server wherever I am. I don't want to have to go through setting up a VPN if I go to another machine. The point about Nextcloud is I just open up a web browser and go to it. That is the benefit. If I have to go and set up a VPN to connect to it, I'm not saying that's a bad idea, and you might want to go that route if you only want your Nextcloud to be connected. Another thing about Nextcloud is you can share files, create a link just like you do with like Google Docs or Google Photos, and share those with people so people can directly access stuff. I don't do that because I figure the less people I know that know where my server is, the better. But yeah, a VPN, that would be a case for a VPN. But then I'd have to set up VPNs on my phone. Yeah, that would be an option, just not something I'm going to do. Let's see. My Brave hour consumes too much resources. Is there any reason for that? Yes, because browsers nowadays take up a lot of resources. Yes, same with me. I use Brave. It's actually one of the few things I've installed that isn't in the Debian repositories, and I actually did add a repository for that. Earlier I said I try not to do that. That is the one thing I do because I do like Brave. As far as consumption, it's just the state of the web and web browsers. I don't know if Firefox would be any better. There are lightweight web browsers out there, but they're going to miss some features that you have. A lot of people really are upset with the fact that basically every web browser these days is based on Chromium, not Chrome. And they're like, oh, it's giving Google monopoly. And I don't know a whole lot on this whole topic. But the thing is, Chromium is an open source project. Notice I don't say free and open source. I'm not sure the exact license, but I'm pretty sure it's just a open source license since there are proprietary browsers based on it. For example, Edge, right? So again, that's the difference between free and open source and open source. If you have a license that allows sub-licensing, companies can take it and they can create Chrome or Edge, which are proprietary browsers based on the open source code. Where if it was true free software under a GPL license, they would have to share their changes with you and not embed those proprietary bits into it. Although companies do find ways around that sometimes. Um, so yeah, there are lighter weight web browsers out there. Brave, any Chromium based web browser is going to take up a lot of system resources. Firefox might be better. I don't know how much better. But as far as people being upset that so many browsers are based on Chromium, they're like it's giving Google power. Well, I don't know how much Google's involved with the Chromium project. They make Chrome. All these other browsers aren't based on Chrome. They're based on Chromium, which is open source. And I just find it funny because everyone's like, "Oh, every browser is going to be based on this. There should be variety." And it's funny because people used to complain all the time, and they probably still do. Every browser renders CSS differently. I was like, what do you want everything to be working to the same or different? Complaining that there's all these different browsers that are based on Chromium and that's not giving you a choice is like saying there's all these distributions of Linux and that's not giving you a choice because it's all based on Linux, in my opinion. Again, I wish Chromium and its browsers that are based on it were under a better license. The Firefox license might be better. Again, I don't know. I know about the GPL license. Anything else, I go to the Too Long Didn't Read license website and it gives me the breakdown of it. They have the Mozilla license for Firefox. I don't know much about it since there's no proprietary browsers I know of based on that. Maybe it doesn't allow sub-licensing, but I don't know enough about the license of it. But yeah, web browsers just take up a lot of resources. The fact that there's all these browsers based on Chromium, I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing. I can take that back years from now if I do see it becoming a problem. But yeah, the people are worried that Google's deciding the way the internet's going, and maybe there's some truth to that because even though Chromium is open source, Google might have a big hand on how that's controlled. But you know what? You have Firefox. The Mozilla company isn't that great of a company. Look into, again, Brian Lunduke has done some videos on this recently and how much money they're spending on different things that have nothing to do with the web browser. So, if you're not using a Chromium-based browser or a Firefox-based browser, the only other browser I know that was Firefox-based was Debian used to have Iceweasel, which again came down to a licensing thing. Even though Firefox was open source, there were some licensing issues with their icons and other graphics. So Iceweasel was Firefox with different graphics, basically. One or two other differences. But they changed it since then, and now Firefox is in the Debian repositories. There's other, what's it, Dillo. What are some other lightweight browsers? I'm trying to think. Epiphany, there used to be Epiphany, but they're going to be missing a lot of features. So, I don't need to absolutely. Let me scroll back. Make sure I'm not. I want to read what everyone has to say. I've been using things from the AUR for many years. Right now, VLC won't play any videos and just crashes. I've been trying to find out why off for and on for weeks. I can't figure out what files are borked. So, yeah, again, I'm not even saying that the AURs necessarily have malicious software. I'm just saying that making something stable is more than just saying that something is stable. So, again, going back to someone telling me that this is years ago, again, that Debian was 2 versions behind on KDE when there's been a stable version, 2 versions newer. Well, just because the developers of KDE say that their software is stable, that doesn't mean that it's going to be stable on a Debian system. You have to make sure that, one, all the dependencies that program use are in a stable state, that that they interact with the current system. So again, let's say we have applications that use Python 2, and then other applications have Python 3. You'd be like, well, I need this to Python 3. I'm just using Python as a go. Anyway, let's say there's 2 libraries of anything. This program is stable, and it requires this library, but there's an older version of that library that all these programs depend on. We need to figure out a way to have both of these installed and not conflict with each other. So stability is not just the developer saying, my program is stable. You also have to make sure it's stable with the system. So yeah, and I'm not saying that I've ever had issues. Again, I use Debian unstable on all my systems except for my servers. And I've been doing that for over 10 years. And there have been maybe 2 times where I've had issues where a program just crashes all the time and I can't fix it and I end up doing a reinstall. And it's been a long, long time since I've done that because I probably am better at fixing problems now than I was. So again, I'm not putting down Arch. I'm just saying Arch is probably great and the repository is probably great. I just don't trust the trusted user. I don't even know what the A stands for. Some user resources, Arch user resources, maybe. I don't know. I've seen some window managers in your tutorials. Which one do you? Oh, I use i3, which is a tiling window manager. Back in the day, for a long, long time, I liked XFCE, and I was really interested in tiling managers by just one of those I didn't feel like changing, and that's a big issue with a lot of people. It's like you're used to something you don't want to change. So for years, I tried to make XFCE like a tiling window manager. There are programs, there's one called Maxine or something like that you can install that on whatever desktop you're on Linux, you can set it to every program opens up in full screen by default, or maximized at least. And then there were buttons I could hit that would kind of tile my windows left and right. And eventually I just went to i3. Now, I forget the name of it. I've seen some videos on YouTube of people who used to use i3. They're using another tiling window manager now. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if that's good. I wonder if I should switch. But really, I am very happy with i3. The only thing I wish I could figure out with i3, for the most part, right here I've got 3 monitors. So when I'm at home, I have 3 monitors. But even when I'm out and about on my laptop with 1 monitor, which usually this screen is closed. I opened it up because I was going to use the webcam off my laptop, but then decided to go with this external one. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I think when I just did that, did I mess up my live stream? Can you guys still hear me? Open that back up. I mean, everything's still on my screen. Open for right now. But yeah, the webcam on this laptop is actually worse than this screen. What was I talking about? Window managers. Yeah, i3 is what I use. I have keys that will, tile the windows vertically or horizontally. I wish there was an option that would tile, and I know some tiling managers do this, to where it would do a grid tile. And the only reason that's come up with for me recently is I've started using CSSH, which allows you to SSH into multiple machines all at once and send the same command to all of them. And so I can run one command, connect to the 2 computers that are hooked to my 2 TVs, my wife's computer, my daughter's computer, my son's computer, and 2 or 3 of the servers I have running. So it's like 6 or 7 machines all at once and do updates. So once a week I can just run one simple command, log in and do the update command. And the thing is, when I do that, it's either all the screens, all the windows are vertically or horizontally squished together. I wish I could say grid it. And I've tried looking that up. I think there might be a plugin for i3 or something, but I wasn't going to go messing with it that much. It's not that big of a deal. It's the only thing I don't like about i3 so far, and I've been using it for a couple of years. Do you think it's a good idea to use Debian testing as a desktop? That's up to you. Again, I use Unstable. And so testing stuff, a lot of distributions like Ubuntu uses, or at least used to, I don't know if it still does, used to use Debian testing repositories. So you figure that most of them, it's already made it from unstable to testing, which means we're pretty sure it's okay, but we need to test it a little bit more. But yeah, if for servers, 100% use stable. For a desktop, it's up to you. Using unstable like I do, you could have issues, and the process to get stuff into the Debian repositories is pretty hard. Like I've looked, oh, by the way, if anybody has any experience in that, I have written some video games. I would love to see them in the Debian repositories. I started the process into looking to that. You need to get yourself, I forget what they call it, like a mentor or something. And there's a big process to getting stuff in the repositories. And you need to go through someone who's already involved until you become a certain status, and then you can start doing stuff yourself. But If anyone has any experience of that, I would love to hear from you because I would love to take some of the video games I made and get them packaged and put in the Debian repositories. Because I make games all the time, some more elaborate than others, some are very simple, but I just want people playing my games, and I think getting them in the repositories would really, really help. And and getting games running on Linux is not an issue. I use a lot of emulators, old arcade games, and console games. And then I try not to use Wine and stuff like that because that means you're probably using proprietary software. I mean, I have in the past, but I don't like doing that on my main system. But a lot of the games, when you search Linux games, like some of them, there's like a handful that are pretty good, and the rest are just like, I would love to contribute more by getting some of my games in the repositories because my games at least look halfway decent because I get graphics that are free to use but are decent. Anyway, yeah, as far as using testing, I use Unstable, so I can't say testing's not good. It's probably better than using Unstable. Uh, I don't need the absolute latest, but everything Debian-based distro I ever use, actually there is some software that I wanted which can't be properly installed using libraries can't be upgraded because some libraries can't be upgraded. Okay. Again, yeah, I'm not saying that you should never go outside the repositories. I'm saying you should stay within the repositories, default repositories, as much as possible. Occasionally, you have to go out, and in cases like that, I guess Flatpaks and Snappaks and all that stuff, because those are, from my understanding, basically just like a chur root, right? It's packaging all the application, all its dependencies inside like basically like a zip file or a tar file or some sort of image file, mounting it and running it. The thing I just don't like about them is, well, there's a few things, but it's just sloppy. It's bulk. It's like if a program needs Python, it's going to package Python in there. I already have Python on my system. Why would I want a new copy of Python for every application I install? I do think it's good for preservation, I guess I should say. Like 20 years from now, if you wanted to play a game or use an old piece of software from a Linux distro now, will you be able to install them because the repositories are going to be down? People are better nowadays about archiving that stuff, but a Flatpak or a Snappak or what's the other one? Docker files. Probably a good way of packaging up a piece of software for future use. But I can't speak yet. If there's a piece of software you want that isn't in the repositories, which has happened to me occasionally, yeah, you just have to figure it out, I guess. Android or iOS? Android, of course. And why? Because Android is open source. It's not free and open source. It's open source. But if you get a piece of hardware, like I buy Motorola devices, they allow you to unlock the bootloader. Once you unlock the bootloader, you can do almost anything. Again, there's still proprietary drivers on there. And the Android system itself does weird things, but if you unlock the bootloader, you can root it, you can change the file system, you can do whatever you want to it. And that's what's important to me. So far, the only thing that I can think of that I haven't been able to figure out how to do on my phone, which most of it is the same as you're doing it on my desktop, it's just in a lot of cases you have to do it in root when you shouldn't have to be root. The only thing is just like directly accessing the camera. I think Android has a server running from what I can gather from what I've tried. Because if I try to access the camera directly, it's busy. So I think they have a server running and you access it just like on a lot of most current desktop systems. You have something like Pulse Audio, right? And then all your applications connect to that because if an application is using a piece of hardware, other applications can't. Go way, way back in the day, way early in Windows days, or even when I first switched to Linux in 2006, there were a lot of applications that if you used one application, it would grab your audio device and no other program could use the audio device. That's why you need an audio server. I think Android's using some sort of video server to access the camera, so I can't just use something like FFmpeg to pull video or pictures from the camera like I would on a desktop computer. There are, if you have Termux installed, there are Termux applications. Use the Android API that you can access the camera. It's hit and miss on devices on whether it works or not. But yeah, Android is open source. Theoretically, you can do almost anything you want to an Android device unless the company who made the device locked it down. But that's not an Android thing. That's a hardware thing with a locked bootloader. You browse, edit, make scripts, so on. You think you would make your Linux life just with the terminal? Oh, I would say 90% of what I do is either in the terminal or web browser. Literally, it's just like I'm in the terminal all day long. Everything I do, anything you do more than once, you can write a script or alias for it and it shortcuts it. For example, the other day, someone I knew needed to, they sent me a picture and said, I need to do this to a bunch of photos. And it was basically take a picture and do an edge detection. So they would get like a tracing of this person's face. It took me a little bit searching. I found an image magic command to do it. I could have done it in GIMP, but if I need to do a lot, I need to do it through image magic. It was a command this long. Image magic commands usually are. I put that into a script that requests a file and creates an output file. It's literally like 4 lines long, just basically checking for inputs and what you want the output to be, and then generates that. And now, anytime I want, I just type on my shell. I just type. I think I called it Edge Tracer, and I'm going to post that online. But Edge Tracer, and I do that and give it an image, and it will trace the image for me. It's like, why would I open up GIMP to do that? If I need to do it once, yeah, going to GIMP and do it. But if I need to do it to 100 photos, or if I need to do it once a day, every day, or I want to automate it, the shell's way to go. And most things on a computer are text. Word documents, spreadsheets, all these things are text-based. But we also have images and videos. And even on my phone, pretty much everything on here I do through the shell or web browser. I either create a web application and I package it as an APK. I've shown videos on doing that before. I usually just link to the website, but there's issues when you update Android. Sometimes it loses those links and you got to recreate them. So I package them as APKs. They're usually like 100 kilobytes, and it just links to my server, and then I'll have an interface for the server, and that's convenient because I don't have a real keyboard on this. So the touch screen, that's the big thing. The drawback of using a little device like this, I can hook a keyboard to it. In fact, if I'm at home, I hook this to my computer and I either SSH in, ADB in, or I screen share to my computer and type stuff from my computer. I don't type stuff on my phone when I'm at home. I do it through my keyboard here. But yeah, I have the terminal, I have Termux installed, I have root access, so I can write scripts pretty much for the most part, 80 to 90% of it exactly like I do on the desktop. And then I can create aliases, shortcuts. For example, I listen to the dailyaudiobible.com. I listen to their audio. They read a few verses every day. I have a script. I just go in, I type in ADB. It shows me the last file I downloaded because I'm usually a few days behind. That way I can keep track of where I am. And then I have a little FZF menu where I can select 2 dates, and it downloads all the audio files from the website between those 2 dates. And then I have an icon on my desktop that just runs a shell script. So you can create icons, custom icons on your desktop that I click and it runs a shell script. So I don't type, someone goes, oh, you use the shell on your phone all the time? No, I write the stuff on my computer or through my computer to my phone, and then I create a script or alias, and I either have, so it's like download, again, it's adb get is my command, but usually I hit DAB get, I type in DA, and I can hit tab or the right arrow, it autocompletes, I hit enter, and it downloads the latest one. And then to play it, I just click the icon and click enter from a list. So I don't work on the shell on my phone like this all the time. I could, but you create aliases or icons. And so Android, yes, Android. I should silence my phone. My wife might be messaging me soon. Oh well. If you hear it ringing, it might be my wife. Let's see. You browse, yeah. And as far as like video editing, there have been a number of times where I just have a script. In the past, I've had a script where I record a video. I would record a bunch of videos in one day, put them all in a directory, and then I had a command I ran that put a beginning and an intro and an outro on the video. Sometimes I wanted a little bit more than that. I actually made a blank file with the intro and outro on it for Kdenlive, which is where I do my video editing. So I would type in tutorial something. I forget what the command was. I don't use it much anymore. It would open up that blank, and then I would drag and drop in the videos and be done with it. And something like Kdenlive, actually, if you edit a video in Kdenlive, you can not just export the video, you can actually export a shell script that will render that video out. It's a full script with melt or MLT code in it. So basically, you could edit a video, and then create the shell script, and then you could drag and drop replacement videos and run that script, and it'll render a video with that template using the videos you put into a folder. Anyway, yeah, someone's again asking about like home network stuff. I kind of talked about Nextcloud earlier. And yeah, I need to do a video on really installing Nextcloud without using some sort of container. Check out SSHFS for sharing folders over SSH. Yeah, I've done that before. And again, you open up any of your modern file browsers, Thunar or PCman FS or PCman. Yeah, anyway, all your modern file browsers on Linux, if you type in SSH // or SFTP // and give it a SSH server, it will mount that directory for you right then and there. And you just browse through it like any local directory. Any more work on the smart stuff, home stuff? Any more items added? Any additional game consoles? I mean, the latest one was the iCade console that someone gave me. So I recently did a little remodel on my house, added an extra room and stuff, which was a great learning experience because I am not a handyman in that aspect. A friend of mine offered to help me. We did 90% of the work ourselves. I just did what he told me. He was only free like 1 or 2 days a month, so it took me over a year, but it's finally done. And so yeah, so it was actually where my porch used to be, so I basically enclosed my porch. There was already a roof and a ground, and there were some fans out there. I ran some outlets. I ran a new wires for AC. I had an AC guy install the AC unit. But I took out the old fans and put in a bunch of LED lights. And I hate light switches. In this office, my bedroom, and my daughter's room, I wire nutted the light switches, removed them, and so I don't know if you can tell I'm turning the light on off. I have a cheap little $2. My video froze again. I hope you guys can hear me. A cheap little $2 also control. It's just 433 megahertz. It sends out a string of numbers that controls that light. So I can turn it on with that, a little key fob, or again, I have a little ESP8266 with a wireless transmitter on it. So I can just do an HTTP request to it. So I can turn the light on and off with my phone, with that, from my laptop. My wife in her office, which is where I just put some of the new lights because I made her a study out there. There's a wireless light switch that we can press on the wall. But when she goes in her room, she's at her computer, she just hits the Windows key and L, and it turns the lights either on or off depending on what they are. When we're in that room, because it's our main media room now where the arcade is and stuff, I have a little mini keyboard. And I have the email button, it has the media keys for email. I have that to turn the lights on and off in that room. So I could turn them off with a button on the wall. I can turn on and off with that remote control while I'm sitting there because that's the remote control that controls the computer that hooks to the TV. Or me and my wife can take out our phone and control it. So it's all very simple. Again, just 433 megahertz wireless, but I can control that through my Wi-Fi. And I can SSH in from anywhere in the world and run a command on my laptop here, and I can turn lights on and off. And I actually have some cron jobs because the lights in the front of my house, I want them going on and off. I used to have a timer switch. The timer switch went bad. I just, again, wired that off, put a little $3 wireless box by the light, and I have a cron job that turns those lights on and off at certain times of the day. And then my office, I set to automatically turn the lights off every night at 10 o'clock. So I'm usually in bed by 10 o'clock. So if I'm in here working and I get up and leave and I forget to turn off the light, at 10 o'clock, these lights are going to go off. So it's very convenient. And I do it in a very cheap way, but I also do it myself. There's no company that I'm going through their system. It's all being done on my local network. If I'm outside of my house, I can always SSH in and control stuff. But mainly lights are what I control. Thank you for your OpenSSH video tutorial. I turned my Android phone into a mini server, watching movies, Android TV via Termux. That's awesome. And again, I've mentioned in the past, an old Android device is a great server. You can set up a simple web server or even Apache on here, SSH, and it's basically a server that has a built-in battery backup. And I have so many Android devices just laying around. It's just nice. A little off topic. I'm using Parma Miko to open Sublime Text Editor on my VPS, but I need my display environment variable. But how can I automate that so I don't have to hard code it? I don't know what Paramiko is. I don't use the Sublime Text Editor, but he's saying he needs to his display variable environment. So like display equals 0:0 or :0 for the first display. I mean, you can automate it by putting it in your bash RC file or Z shell RC file, the RZ file for your shell. But you're saying you don't want to hard code it. So I guess you can alias it. I know when I SSH into one of my kids' computers, sometimes I want to see their display and I have to set the display, and it's just in my shell history. So I usually just hit Control R, start typing export, and then tab enter, and it will set the display so I can see what they're seeing. So I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. You can set your variables in your bash or your shell's RC file, but that would be hard coding it. So I'm not sure really what you're asking. Have you tried Vivadilla? No, I do not know what that is. I would look it up right now, but I'm really falling behind on reading people's questions. Debian, Make Debian, Packstall are good software sources too. Okay, I guess is that way to get Debian packages for Debian? I don't know what MakeDeb is. I thought MakeDeb was a command to package stuff for Debian files. It is based on Mozilla, but lightweight and looks like Opera or Opera. Opera. Okay. Oh, okay. That's the question. Going back 2 comments ago, Viva Dahlia, or however you say it. So it's a web browser. No, I have not tried it. Is their default browser? Really, I used to go back and forth back in the day between when Flash was around, I was using Chrome. I hated Flash, but so many websites needed it. I was just using Chrome because it was the easiest way. Then when Flash died off, I was going back and forth between Chrome and Chromium and Firefox, and I just like the developer tools in a Chromium-based browser better. Although I've seen things saying that Firefox has come a long way with their developer tools. Brave, I just really like the ad blockers are built in. You can right click on an element and add it as an ad and remove it from a site, because some websites have little pop-ups that aren't ads but they're annoying, and you can just literally just right click it, say hide this, block this element, and then it gives you a little slider to make sure you're erasing the right thing, and then it will do it. So I'm not opposed. Again, I think Firefox is a great browser. I just got tired of going back and forth. Arc browser, another reason Bash is so wonderful, it's cross-time compatible. I don't know what cross-time compatible is. Bash also, people think Bash Unix system. It's the default, last I checked, the default shell on Mac systems, most Linux systems. But you can also get a single binary Bash executable natively for Windows, and you have since Windows XP. I know that there's a whole Windows subsystem for Linux. I really don't get the point of that. But you could always install Bash, or what I prefer when I'm on a Windows machine is BusyBox. There's a single binary BusyBox, which I've talked about BusyBox so much. It's such a great tool because it's not just a shell, but it has all those external tools that you commonly use. There's a single binary for that you can get for Windows. It's like under 1.5 MB. And then you can use that shell. It's technically not Bash, although it does link itself as Bash. Usually BusyBox is a shell, or Ash, however you want to say it. Yeah, and so I can write a shell script, and I know that it will run on, as long as I'm not using system-specific things, the shell itself, it will run on anything. Just on a Windows machine, you may have to install a 1 MB file. NixOS solves that dependency issue. Arch user repositories is what AUR stands for, which I think is what I guessed. Oh, I scrolled a little bit and it jumped a whole lot. I still love Thunar. So yeah, Thunar, I like Thunar. Last I checked, it didn't do split windows. And when I'm copying, dragging stuff from folder to folder, I like that. So maybe it does have it now. it seems like a basic feature that Thunar should have and doesn't. So for a long time, I was using PC Man FM, so a PC Man file manager, because it had split screen. But recently, I switched to Nemo, and the main reason for that is its search functionality, because all my stuff syncs with my Nextcloud server, and my Nextcloud server gets backed up to other servers, but I still have an Amazon account and a Google account, actually more than one Google account, that I do backups to, because I want backups, because I back up everything 3 or 4 times. Everything's copied, especially photos, on 3 or 4 devices and files and drives that I put in a safe here at home. But I want files that are not in my house, that are also easy to share. So I do still use Google Photos and Amazon Photos as another backup for my photos. And what I do is I don't automatically sync because I don't want to use their proprietary software. There might be open source ways to do it, but basically at the beginning of each month, I do a full system backup of my system. And what I do is I go into Nemo, I go into my photos folder, and I just search for all JPEGs, sort it by date, and then drag and drop that into Amazon Photos and Google Photos as another backup. And for some reason, PC Man FM, its search feature, there was something about it, like I couldn't filter by date or something like that. But anyway, that's why I started using Nemo. But yeah, Thunar is a good file browser. Last I checked, it didn't have a split screen option though, or tabs, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, someone's saying the video froze. That was earlier. We can hear you. We have audio. Video is back. Front. Hello, I just switched from i3 to DWM plus FlexEye Patch. I think DWM, I've heard of. FlexPatch, I have not. So March 7 radio interceptions. Why did you switch? What made you switch? Because I am curious. I'm always up for trying something new, although I've really gotten myself really comfortable with i3. You should demessage right now, live, and see if you can figure out what exactly happened with the camera. It could be educational, or it's probably just a USB device resetting. Yeah, actually, let's see if this freezes the video. I have this on a 6-foot extension and then the cable, and that's going into a USB hub. Not the best setup. Why do I have this set up? Because when I go on vacation, I have a couple of cameras set around the house outside, but as an extra thing, I take this camera and put it to my window, which points at my front door, and I run, what's it called? Is this called webcam? No, Motion, which will record video anytime it detects motion, and I have that pushed to a server. So when I'm on vacation, I set up extra cameras like that push video when there's movement to a server. So I had this set up from a vacation I went on last month across the room, and when I started live streaming today, I just didn't disconnect it. So it's going from my computer to a USB hub to a 6-foot, probably a 6-foot extension, and then into the camera. So probably not the best setup. So that could have been it, because I was moving wires when I was closing that screen. If someone wanted to, could they send a capture card or send me a capture card or hardware? So like what you have hardware you want me to test or look at? Possibly. I for a very short amount of time, I did have a PO box just because I thought people might want to send me stuff. It wasn't worth having. But maybe if you can somehow contact me privately. Hey, good evening. How you doing, Chris? I'm doing good. Android used to use ALSA. Not sure how true that is anymore. Android might still use that with something on top of it. Well, I do know that I can directly use FFmpeg or SOX and stuff to record audio on my Android device. So that's probably still true. But again, I think that's going back, to when I said they had a video server running stuff on the phone. You screen share your phone to your PC? it is actually Android GUI being shared, or are you running separate X Linux? Okay, so I've done videos on this. I've talked about it. It's how I usually record Android stuff as well. Arthur Reeder, look up him on YouTube. He's the one that originally brought me to it. In your repositories, if you're on Debian, but probably most Linux distributions, there's a program called, let's see. See, I have it aliased to a command. Actually, okay, so SCRCPY. I think it's short for screen copy. SCRCPY. That is a program. You install it from your repositories. You enable ADB on your phone, Android debugging, and you hook up USB, although theoretically you could do it through a network as well. You run that command, and without having to install anything on your device, because I think it actually pushes something over ADB, it will start streaming your video to your computer, and you can use your mouse and keyboard to control your phone, and you're viewing it on your screen. So yeah, that, if I need to do something GUI and I want to type on the keyboard, or sometimes I just enable SSH on Termux and I'll SSH in, or if I just want to do something through ADB, I'll just do it through the shell that way. But yeah, you can share your screen from your phone through USB using ADB and that command, and it just shows up there. And again, you use your mouse and keyboard just as if you're typing on the screen there. Hey Chris, good day. Could you talk a little about how you find programs and or how you find utilities to use in your scripts from noobish perspective? Say I know I want to do things, but what to use? Okay, so basically they're asking how do you learn what programs and what commands and all that. When I first started using, let's go even back before I started using Linux. When I was a little kid, I had this IBM DOS computer, and it was a nice machine with 2 floppy drives, but it actually had an internal hard drive, which was unusual at the time. That was fairly early on. I'm talking mid '80s. I would turn on, it would actually go straight to a menu where I could, click through different screens, just a text menu, and then go into a word processor or Print Master, where I could make like little pixelated art and print cards, greeting cards and stuff. But whenever I was done, my dad told me, go to the exit option, and that would bring you to a DOS prompt. And then you just type exit, and then you can turn off the machine. I don't know how important that was, but that's what the process was. Well, you see movies and stuff, people typing stuff at the prompt. So I would just start typing random words at the prompt. And I'm sure that at some point, I know there were a few times where instead of getting command not found, it would give me some other error. So I'm pretty sure I typed the word copy, because as a kid, that's a word I knew. I didn't get very far on that, but that's what I did. It's just experimentation. When I first started using Linux, not only did I look up stuff online, but I knew that if I started typing a command and I hit tab, it would auto-complete that command, right? So what I would do is I would hit A and hit tab and see a list of commands. And I would go through them. If I didn't know what it would do, I would run that command. And if it didn't give me any output or didn't give me anything, I would type in that command dash help or / help. Or, dash help. Whoa, I went back to a Windows machine there. Dash H or dash help. And so I would just learn about these machine things. And I kind of did the same thing back in Windows. I would go into the Windows directory and then into the System32 directory, and I would click on a bunch of these commands and just see what they did. Windows actually has a lot of commands that have, when you click on them, you can tell they've been around since the early 90s at the very least, that are still there. And like there's even one, I don't know about most recent, at least on Windows 7 was the last I checked, because I don't have a Windows machine, and the last I checked was at work when we still had Windows 7 machines. But they actually had a built-in program that would turn a zip file into an executable file. It was very limited, but it's like, whoa, that's cool. Where a lot of times you would get some sort of external tool. But basically, the man command. So it just randomly, this is just randomly learning different commands, because part of programming is 2 different things. I have something I want to do and I need to figure out how to do it. But then sometimes you know how to do stuff and you go, what can I do with this? So learning what commands do that you may not be familiar with is super useful. So just running these commands, you know, most likely you're not going to just issue a command as a regular user on a Linux system and hurt anything, right? If you're running a sudo, possibly, but usually you have to give some arguments to like just running rm isn't going to hurt anything. rm-fr / is going to cause issues. But just running the command, it's like it's either going to give you no output if there was no errors, or it will ask you, give you some suggestions, or you can run the help file, or you can run the man file. Learn what all these commands do, but also most of what you do on a day-to-day basis can really be done with a lot of the core tools that are on all Linux systems that are used all the time. And these are things like grep and awk, cat and read and stuff like that. To get a list of those, I would suggest checking on your system, type in busybox. If it says it's not found, if you're on a Debian-based system, sudo apt install busybox. Then run busybox, and it will give you a list of commands. Learn what each one of those commands do. Most of what you're going to need to do is that. Besides that, it's kind of just, if I need to know how to do something, I'll just type doing this with bash, right? So I'd be like, how to download a file with bash. And it'll probably bring you to either wget, curl, or the old school way of doing it natively through bash, which I recently did a video on, but I don't think works with HTTPS. And then you I know the name of this tool, and then you can start looking at what that tool does. But yeah, that's it. Again, there's lots of different ways. And again, going back to, are you developing something for yourself or for mass usage? A lot of what I do is for myself. Sometimes it gets a little sloppy, but I'll share it. I try to clean up my code, but I'll share it because I think other people might find it useful. It's okay to be a little sloppy when you're writing stuff for yourself. Obviously, if you're mass producing something, you want to clean up your code as much as possible. But if what you do gets the job done, that's all that really matters when you're making stuff for yourself. So yeah, just figure it out. And of course, YouTube is a great option for seeing how things are done. But lots of times I don't use YouTube because sometimes you just want to see a command that you can copy and paste. But always be careful if you don't know what a command does. Look into it a little bit. Man, set up a nice cam next time you live stream. Sorry, again, this wasn't planned. I did a few months ago. I even did a video on it where I got a video input card and my nice camera set up. I just didn't feel like setting it up. Today is a lazy day. I know you guys haven't all been around here since the beginning, but this wasn't the plan for the day. I was going to... Tuesday morning is my day for recording videos, and I just wasn't in the mood. So I thought I've been wanting to do a live stream forever, so I figured just set this up. So I'm sorry. It's not great. But close your eyes and listen to me. You don't need to see me, right? I bought a hosting service X, my website, and tried to connect to it from the terminal using SSH, OpenSSH, edit the file, but couldn't. Is it possible to do this? It'd make life a lot easier. Hosting service X, my website, and try to connect to it from terminal to edit the file. What file? I'm not sure what you're saying. So you should just be able to SSH. Are you having a problem SSHing in? Because if you use, I use Vultr for my website. I'm not saying that they're the best. That's just who I use. When you create a new server, they give you a root username and password that you should be able to SSH in with, or they have a virtual console in their web browser. And once you do that, you create a username and password, and then you should just be able to SSH in as that user. And then it'd be best if you create a security key and push it over. But you should just be able to, if SSH server is running, SSH your username at that server. And if it's on a different port, tell it what port. So I'm not sure, but yeah, once you SSH in, you should just be able to open the file with Vim or Nano, or file share and use a GUI application. But why? Hey Chris, speaking about Windows, did you see a recent hype about emulating Windows on Android devices? There's a video about... I saw a video yesterday, I don't know if it's the same thing you're talking about, but apparently there's a proprietary version of Wine coming to Android. And I was like, So I looked up, Wine's under an LGPL license, which is the lesser GPL license, I think it stands for, which is usually for libraries, which doesn't make sense to me because although it uses libraries, it's an application. So I'm not sure how all that works out legally, but it is something coming. Not really something I'm interested in, although it could be useful if you need it. I try not to run anything through Wine on my main systems. I just don't. It's one of those. Wine is an amazing tool. The fact that someone's able to recreate these libraries so that you can run Windows software natively. It's not emulating anything, and Wine is not an emulator, is what they say, because it's not emulating. It's recreating the libraries that you need from Windows. So they're basically rewriting these libraries. They're backwards engineering them. It's not emulating. And that being said, that means it's running natively on your system. If you don't realize that I could write a batch file or a C file or any type of Windows executable that could wipe out your Linux hard drive if you ran it in Wine, right? Because I don't use Wine much. It's been a long time, but Wine by default mounts your home directory as a Z drive. So all I have to do is write a script that, or an application, a Windows application that goes to the Z drive and deletes everything. If you run that in Wine, it's going to wipe out your home drive. Theoretically, I haven't tried this. Most likely, if you're if you're downloading malicious software for Windows and running it in Wine, your Linux system's probably going to be okay unless they're expecting you to run it in Wine, which is becoming more and more of a common thing. So I just be careful using Wine with these proprietary applications. I guess if you're getting the programs legit, that's not an issue. If you're downloading from a website like a pirate website, it's a little more concerning. Obviously, I just be careful with it. But no, that's neat that they're doing that. Not surprised that it's happening. But yeah, I don't know much about it. What desktop environment do you use with Debian? Do you mind showing your setup? Technically, I don't use a. Well, I guess I use a window manager. There's a difference between a desktop environment and a window manager. I use i3WM, i3 window manager. And as far as my setup, it's a tiling window manager. I'd have to look through my config file because a lot of that's like stuff specifically for me. I don't think there's anything personal in there, but it points probably to a lot of scripts that I have that you don't have for shortcut keys because everything's done with shortcut keys. But as I said in the past, I earlier in the video, I like looking at stuff full screen. I don't get the idea of floating windows for most things. It's like if I'm looking at the web browser, I want the web browser. If I'm looking at my terminal, I want my terminal. I can divide my terminal up if I'm doing multiple things. But when you have floating windows, like you have a window here and a window here, well, all this space is wasted. So if I have more than one window set up, I want them taking up the full screen, either split this way or split this way if there's two of them. I don't want empty space, that's wasted space. And that's why I went to a tiling window manager. And I get tiling window managers might be confusing for people because people are used to clicking and dragging windows around where all this is done with the keyboard. I like doing stuff with the keyboard anyway. But you got to remember that a floating window is just wasted space. There are times where a floating window is nice, for like a dialog box, but the system knows if a dialog box is made properly, that it's a dialog box. Windows implemented a sudo command recently. Did it? I didn't know that. I know that, like, if you have a application or a script on a Windows machine and you have an icon for it on your desktop, you can right click and say run as administrator. And I did find some PowerShell code or Visual Basic code, Visual Basic script code that would basically try to restart it as administrator if you clicked it, if I remember correctly, because I had some scripts I wrote for Windows that require administrative uses. So I would have it. So basically, I have shell scripts I write like this too. I have shell scripts that the script needs to be root to run. So what I'll do is the first line of the script says, check what user are you, user 0 or something like that. So are you root? If not, the script will restart itself with sudo at the beginning. So it's good that they're adding a sudo command, I guess, because it's kind of annoying if I'm at a shell on a Windows machine. whether it be the CMD or PowerShell, and I needed to run something as administrator, I'd have to basically open up another window as administrator from my knowledge, at least in the past. Thank you for all of your videos in which you share your knowledge and experience. Well, I learn a lot from them. You're welcome. I don't game or anything. I just find this mind-blowing to be able to run a Windows desktop and game program on the go with an Android device. Yeah, again, I don't know if the project you're talking about is the Wine project I heard about. And again, sadly, from what I heard, it's going to be proprietary. But it's amazing technology, Wine, whether I like what people are using it for or not. Do you pirate movies? I like Richard Stallman's answer to this. I was, saw him talking once, probably like 10 years ago. And someone asked him what he thought about piracy. And he said, I don't think boats should shoot cannons at other ships, which is funny. First of all, I don't like the term piracy. Because to me, piracy means you're stealing something, and watching a video is not stealing. To steal, you have to actually take something from someone else to where they don't have it. That being said, I'm not going to sit here and admit to illegal stuff, but I will say that everybody does piracy, whether they know it or not. I have friends who are very against piracy, but they will go on Google and do a search for coloring pages for their kids and then print up coloring pages they find. It's like, Mickey Mouse or Sleeping Beauty and stuff. It's like, are you sure you have the right to that? Like, was that from Disney? And did Disney give you right to download it and copy it? Or did someone else draw it? And did that person have the right to draw it? And did they have the right to copy? Because that would be illegal too. That would be piracy. You were downloading and printing. But in their people's minds, when they think of piracy, it's always not what they're doing. Okay? That being said, watching movies for free, it's like software. I think you should pay developers of software. I don't think you should pay for software ever. You can pay for a service if they're hosting something, but never pay for software. Again, pay developers. There is a difference. And I feel the same. If I want to pay someone to make a movie, for example, okay, it's been too long now. I am a huge Punisher fan. I have a box like this, a comic book box full of, like, I'm off screen here, of nothing but Punisher comics. And that's just from the 80s and 90s, which is when they were the best. And then I have some more that just don't fit in that box. I like that. I am a huge Punisher fan of old school Punisher. New stuff is hit and miss. Most of it's not that great. I really, really liked the 80s Punisher with Dolph Lundgren. It's just, if you like, I'm not saying it's the best movie ever, but if you just like 80s action movies, it's a great movie. I really, really like, what was it? When did it come out? 2005 or so? The Punisher with, drawing a blank on his name. I can't remember the actor's name. Anyway, that was a good movie. Punisher Warzone was a horrible movie. I like to pretend it doesn't exist. And then the new series that came out where they did the 2 seasons, I thought was pretty good too. There are things I would have done differently, but overall I thought it was good. It was so good that, they're not making it anymore, but it was so good that if they said, hey, we need to raise money so we can make another season, I would donate money. Now, I try to only donate to free open source or Creative Commons type media. If they said, hey, we want to make another season, we need to raise this much money, I'd give them $5. If they said, we're going to make it free for everyone to watch, and we're going to share the resource files we create with it, I'd give them $50. I would love to see another season. I'd love to see it open. I'd love to see those file shares, all the special effects files. But to pay somebody because you've already made it, now you're demanding I pay you, that's just ridiculous. I've used the example of someone came to my house and mowed my lawn and then said, hey, you owe me money. Or they came and painted my house and said, hey, you owe me money because I painted your house. I didn't ask you to do that. Yeah, but you're enjoying it now. You're reaping the benefits. For me, it's the same when it comes to music and media. It's like, I either hire you to create software or a movie or a show or a song, and I pay you, or you make it and hope that I appreciate it so much that I donate to you. There's a difference between paying someone to do something and donating to them because you appreciate their work. And And these movie companies are just corrupt in so many ways. That's a whole nother topic. But yeah, I'm not going to sit here and go, yeah, I steal stuff. Again, it's not stealing. You got to take something that's from somebody for it to be stealing. What's the old comparison? If I saw your bike and I built myself a bike just like it, I didn't steal your bike. Your bike is still there. If you woke up in the morning, your car's still in your driveway, I didn't steal your car unless I drove it and took it back. But if I made my own car just like it, it's not stealing. If I make a copy of a video, I would have no problem like Netflix or something. They're providing a service. They have servers. They're using up space on their servers and bandwidth. You're using their service. They should get paid. But the DRM is not something I'm going to go in for. And just the whole movie industry in general. Here, angelstudios.com. There is a great cartoon that a viewer of mine from YouTube recommended called Tuttle Twins. It is a great cartoon. In fact, I have found that a lot of the stuff on Angel Studios is are great shows and movies. Freelancers is a hilarious show. And it's free on their website, and then you have a choice to pay it forth. So I've actually donated money to both of those shows in hopes that they make future seasons. Tuttle Twins, I'm pretty sure, is going to get a third season. Freelancers has 2 seasons. I haven't seen anything about a third season. JK Studios, who makes that show, they've put out some movies since then that look interesting. But yeah, I like a show. I will pay you to make more of those shows. But I'm not going to pay you for the past one unless I really appreciate what you're doing. But if you're made it and you're charging people for it, well, I'm not going to pay you so you could charge people for it. Anyway, that was a little bit of a rant. But are you considering switching to? Well, there's a lot of talk about Wayland. People complain about X or Xorg or X11. I have never had any issues with it really. I will say that on some systems, if I'm watching a video and there's panning, sometimes I get a little tear line in the screen. Other than that, I really like Xorg, but it sounds like a lot of distributions are finally switching to a Wayland. I don't know anything about it. It's supposed to be better. It's supposed to be built from the ground up and modern since X is like older than I am. So, I mean, I guess it's good that we're coming out with something new. I will say my Mazda cars have little Linux consoles in them. And supposedly there's a copy of Wayland on them from the videos I've watched online. In fact, there was one time where I've shown videos, just search Mazda on my website, where I've gotten a shell and stuff, but you can write a script and put it on a flash drive and plug it in, and when you start up the car, it will run that shell script. And I ran something that actually killed the display that it was on and then started up a web browser. I don't remember what web browser, but supposedly that web browser was using Wayland. So that would be pretty neat if I had a chance to mess with that to maybe make some things. Now, you can write applications for these Mazda devices. There's a whole community behind it, basically using HTML and CSS and JavaScript or something like that. And I've installed a couple extra applications on there. I was saying to my wife the other day, I would love to write more applications for my screen. For example, my family, my wife, and my 2 kids, we play Duck Spot. When we see a Jeep that has ducks on the dash, if you call it out, you get a point. But if you call out a Jeep and it doesn't have a point, doesn't have a duck, you lose a point. It's hard. My son has a marker and he would write the score on the window, but every time the window gets rolled down, it gets erased. So I'm like, it'd be great if I just had a little thing with 4 ducks here and I can click on a duck for each of us and add the points up, while we're going. And that seems like a simple application to write. My wife's like, oh, you should do that. You love doing that stuff. I go, yeah, but I would have to write the software in here, then go out there, install it on the car, make sure it works. If there's any trouble, bring it back here and try again. It's just, I wish that it was easier for me to develop for that. Anyway, again, going off on stuff. I don't know much about Wayland. A lot of people love it. I don't dislike X. I'm happy with X, but if everything switches over to Wayland and all the applications are compatible that I use, great. Thanks for coming live. No problem. I do have a line in there for, okay, I gotta go back. Oh, I skipped. My desktop environment is i3 and a bunch of no startup ID lines. I have a bunch of application stuff, Yeah, he's writing Dunst and FEBG for background and NM application applet for network stuff. I used to use that. I don't use that anymore. I use NTUI, which is in the shell, and then the GNOME key for keys and stuff. So on desktop when nothing is running, and then Pulse Audio and System Tray. I have Pulse Audio. Sometimes Pulse Audio has a little trouble starting when I restart my system. I don't restart my system often, but lately when I've gone in, it's like, I don't know, it's trying to start Pulse Wire, which I think is a newer version or something to do with Pulse Audio, but it doesn't work right, so I have to kill that and start Pulse Audio. And something I really should fix, but I so rarely reboot. It's not that big of a deal. You wouldn't download a car? I would if it made a copy of the car. If there was a 3D printer that could print a full car, yeah, I'd download the plans and print a car. That's not stealing, that's creating my own car. How do you guys manage and download software programs in Windows? Do you guys install exe files from Microsoft Software Center, Chocolate Pack? Okay, so again, I don't have any Windows systems. I have a Windows machine at work, which is now almost completely useless because it's a VM running in the cloud and is streamed to our screen. But sometimes I would want to do stuff on the Windows machine. So I actually have my keychain with probably a 64 gig flash drive on here, which actually has I forget the name of the application. An application installed that basically it searches the drive for ISOs, so I could plug it in and boot, and I have like 5 different Linux distros and Android on there that I can boot from. But then I have a directory that is called like Windows Bin, and it's just a bunch of standalone applications for Windows, BusyBox being one of them. And for a while I was using Chocolatey Manager. There was an issue though, since I don't have administrative rights on the machine at work. And I do that, it's because obviously it's a Windows machine that I physically have access to. Really, almost any machine that you physically have access to, you can be administrator or root. But I wasn't supposed to be running things as administrator. And for a while, I'm pretty sure Chocolatey, I could install things without... There's a reason that I stopped using Chocolatey. It like stopped working, and I think it was because I needed administrative rights. But yeah, Chocolatey was a good option on a Windows machine. I don't necessarily trust the applications in there. Again, there's a lot of options out there when it comes to packages and package managers, and I really don't know. I'm not saying that some are good or some are bad. Like I trust Debian because Debian's been around for a long time. I know the process of getting stuff in there is difficult and checked, but it's like sometimes I go to look up how to install an application, something. Usually it's like a web application or something that I may want to run on a server, and it's like, oh, use pip. Or Node.js has its own. It's like, I don't know how well these applications are vetted. Who decides what gets into these repositories and don't? I'm not saying that they're good or bad. I'm just saying I don't know. I don't know what their standards are. And I have occasionally installed things using pip when I know, okay, this is a big project. The project is saying it's this, and I know I'm installing the package that they are saying, but I still don't like doing it. But on Windows, you really don't have a good option because I don't trust anything that Microsoft puts out, and there's no other real option that I know of. But Chocolatey was a good option for a while. Favorite music genre? I like lots of different stuff. My favorite band since I've been a teenager is Nine Inch Nails. I still listen to them a lot, not as much as I used to, so it's not appropriate because of my kids. But I also I'm from the Napster generation. When I was young, it's like you liked one type of music and that was it. And then Napster came out. And all of a sudden, it's like I can listen to other stuff without having to pay money for it. And there were techno remixes of everything back in the 90s. You name it, there was a techno remix of it. But bands I like I said, Nine Inch Nails. I really like old school Prodigy. What other bands I like? Recently, I came across a band online that I like. The Avalanches. I came across their video Frontier Psychiatrist, which the video is just great. Again, I was a teenager in the 90s. Things were weird in the 90s, and I loved that. For example, just look up Liquid Television. You can find episodes on archive.org. Liquid Television or Cartoon Sushi. It's like, to me, that's the 90s. It's just like weird stuff. Liquid Television is where Aeon Flux and Beavis and Butthead came from, and it was just like random little cartoons, and some of them were really bad, but it's just weird stuff. And the Frontier Psychiatrist kind of just click that. The video is just weird. Chemical Brothers. My playlist is so random. I got a bunch of like Beatles songs and Monkey songs on there. But I have like almost 700 songs on my phone, and it's just so all over the place. I've been downloading a lot of like chill wave or synth wave. Me and my family like when we go on long road trips, just having that, so it's just music in the background without words. But I guess genre, since Nine Inch Nails, I guess industrial would be the answer. But electronic music, but that's all over the place. It could be slow, it could be fast. Hey man, live streaming after a long time. For some reason, YouTube doesn't send notifications when you have a bell icon clicked. Yeah, I don't know. Pipewire is new sound system. The latest distros switched to it. Even Mint. Pipewire Pulse is like a transitional layer for Pulse applications that work for Pipewire. Yeah, it's something I knew it was something along those lines. I'm still using just Pulse Audio because I think Pipewire, when I have Pipewire installed, things don't work, and I just haven't had a chance to look into it, and Pulse Audio has worked fine. I know anytime I play anything with MPV, which is my preferred media player for both music and video, it always gives me a complaint, something about Pipewire not being there or something like that, but everything plays fine. It just gives me a little warning message. Depending on your configuration, Pesky Tray kind of works with Pipewire. Okay. I was sad because of 2 strikes I got, but watching him reminds me my sole reason for starting the channel, and it making me feel better because Dash YT can delete but can't stop me from making video. Oh, YouTube can't delete, can delete. But yeah, I've gotten some warnings on YouTube, and both times, gotta be careful what I say here so I don't pull this video and give me a strike. I did a whole video on how I download media, how I stream media, movies and videos and scripts I use, and I was very careful to only use public domain stuff that I was streaming, both audios and videos, but just to show how I do it. But I accidentally mentioned a program that allows you to do stuff like that with YouTube, and they don't like that. I got a warning a couple of years ago on a video like that, and I pulled it down, and this one I got a strike, and it said this point of the video. So it wasn't even talking about, I was in the video, I talked about torrents and other stuff like that, but it's when I specifically mentioned this one program that I use all the time. When I watch YouTube videos, I don't watch them on YouTube. I'll go to my YouTube subscription list, and I have Vimium installed in my browser, which gives you Vim-like keys in your web browser. So I see the icon and the title for video on it. I hit YF, and then it puts letters by all the links, and I hit the 2 letters for that, and it copies it to my clipboard. And then I hit the Windows key and Y, and it streams that video using MPV and this other application in the background. So yeah, I watch stuff. I like MPV as a media player, and I'm going to stream using that from any website. Someone's still using Pulse because I just don't want to do the work to switch to anything else. Yeah, because I also have scripts, like I have my internal speakers, my headphones, and I have a sound bar. And I just hit Windows P and it cycles through those. So it's like if I'm listening to audio, I just do that until it goes to the output and it gives me a little dunce notification up in the corner. And I don't know if I switch the Pipewire, I might have to rewrite that script. Do you use any Bluetooth headsets with Linux? It's really hard to get the built-in microphone to work over Bluetooth. I have Bluetooth stuff is always kind of a pain in the butt. I actually have a script that I wrote that kind of helps it out. But like I have 2 game controllers here. They're PS4 game controllers, but they're not really PS4 game controllers. And one connects better. They both will eventually connect, but one will connect right away and the other one has difficulty, at least on my Linux systems. Headphones. I have a set of headphones. Mainly I use it for my phone. But yeah, Bluetooth is just a pain. Do you use online radio on terminal? I have no online radio, but I'll stream music using MPV. And again, that application that I'm not allowed to say on this particular platform, MPV will automatically use that if you give it a link that it recognizes. So yeah, there is a Play with MPV add-on Firefox to right-click play. Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't need to install an add-on. In fact, if I did, I'd write my own. I do have my own little add-ons or plugins or whatever they call them for Chrome-based browsers that automate stuff on websites. But yeah, that's good to know that there is a plugin or an add-on for Firefox that lets you click on videos and open them in MPV. I always wonder why you still choose to be a firefighter despite having a good software engineering career level developed. Well, I said it at the beginning of this video. I don't want to do computer stuff for work. I like working with computers. I don't want to do it as work. That's the main reason. Also, at the end of this month, I'll have 20 years in, which means I can retire in 5 years with a full pension. So yeah, I just got 5 more years, and then I can just make YouTube videos all the time. Yeah. So it's like, I like creating software. I write software. I wouldn't want to work for a company because, one, I would only write open source software. I've actually had offers to write software. I'm like, well, I only write stuff under a GPL license. Whoa, no, well, yeah, then you're a scumbag if you're writing proprietary software. 100% my view, you are a scumbag if you write proprietary software. There's absolutely no reason not to, at least under a BSD license. But if a company writes something under a BSD license, I don't necessarily trust them either, because at any point they can just lock it up. So that's why I stick with a GPL license. As I said in the past, closed sourcing your software means you're hiding something. Companies take such offense when you say that. I'm not saying necessarily that you're up to something bad. I'm just saying you're hiding what you're doing. That's what you're doing. That's why you're not showing. There's no reason not to show your source code. Absolutely no reason. You can show your source code and still have it be proprietary. Say, this is our source code. You're not allowed to share it. Yeah, I mean, you could. That'd be stupid, though. Because the benefit of open source software is that other people can add to it. So someone once said to me, and I completely understand this feeling deep down inside, I like writing software. I usually write it, and share the source code. And if an individual is using it, that's great. But if a company is using it, they're making money. I should get some of that money. Why? Why? Right? You already wrote the software. Why do you care if they're making money? They're the ones. Why weren't you making money off of it, right? If they're making money off of it, using it somehow still under the confines of the license, which is very doable, why didn't you? They went through the extra steps to get that thing, to get that point. And the thing is, if you use something like a BSD license, they could take your code, make changes, close source it, make money off it, and you get absolutely nothing. If you release your code under a GPL license legally, and I'm not saying that companies don't, try to skirt around this, they have to share any changes they make public. Okay? So again, I've talked about this in the past. A license, such as a GPL license or a BSD license or an MIT license or so forth and so on, these are not end-user license agreements. Like when you install proprietary software or you're installing Windows, you get a license that you have to agree to use that software, right? With a GPL license and MIT license, all these open source licenses, they are not end-user license agreements. For it to be open source, there are no restrictions on how you use it. These are licenses that say how you share it. So I could take the Linux source code or anything under a GPL license, modify it for my own personal use, and I don't need to share those changes. But if I share what I've changed in a binary format with anybody, now I have to share those changes. So if I make my binary changes public, I also have to share the source code. So you write a program and some company is making money off it. If they didn't, change it, they're just using it as is, so what? But if they make any changes, any improvements, they have to share that with you, and they just improved your program. That is the benefit of it. Yeah, so it just, but I get that, like, oh, they're making money, I should be making money. Yeah, well, you know what? Someone once designed a hammer. I doubt they're still making money off the hammers being sold today. People think, oh, you have to lock things down. You know what? It's like, I like to think of Tylenol, right? right? Tylenol, the patent on Tylenol, and patents are different than copyrights, I know, but this is the patent on Tylenol was up a long, long, long time ago. You know what? Tylenol's still making plenty of money, even though there's all these other off-brand Tylenol substitutes, right? And lots of times when it comes to those third-party, or store brand, generic brand stuff, lots of times the main company's still making them, and they're making money off of it. They're just charging less because they're not doing the advertising. They don't have the name recognition. When you buy something like Tylenol, you're buying the name. Right? Just like ibuprofen and Advil. Advil is ibuprofen. Ibuprofen is the drug. Advil is a brand name. And you can buy just ibuprofen for like half of what you get Advil for. It's the same exact stuff. And there might be a chance that the Advil company's making that. For example, back in the 90s, I worked at Circuit City, and we used to have web TV. It was a box that allowed you to check your email and surf the web just on TV. It was for old people, right? They were all made by the same company. They all looked identical, but one would say Sony, one would say Magnavox or whatever like that. And certain weeks, this one's on sale. Next week, that one's on sale. But old people come in and be like, "Oh no, I only buy Sony brand stuff," and you'd be like, "It's the same exact thing. It's made in the same factory. They just slap their name on it and get their cut." And so people buy it for the name. When I worked at GNC, General Nutrition Store, there were vitamins. There was the GNC brand, and then there was I'm trying to remember. There was another like name brand, right? They have lot numbers on where these are produced. You have to know lot number in case there's a recall and stuff. Some of them would have the same lot number, the different brands. I have a friend who was a AC guy. When he got a new AC unit to install at someone's house, he would joke, he would pull out a bag. It would come with a bag. And Train is the big company. Theirs is expensive. Well, he would get this AC unit and it would come with a Train tag and another brand name and another brand name. And depending on what you pay for, they slap that name on there. So you're paying all this big money for a Train. He would go to friends. He would install it. He would install it at the cheaper price and be like, "You want me to upgrade you to a Train?" And you just slap it on there because that's just how it works. So like to say I control this isn't necessarily about survival in a company. It's about control is what it comes down to. I have something I want to talk about. I think it's like a generic drug of all of video software. Yeah. Oh wow, a lot of stuff was said while I was talking about that. Someone retracted a message. How do you stop your kids from getting addicted to Instagram and modern social media? I mean, everyone is Snapchatting in school. I homeschool. My kids don't go to public schools, so they're here with me and my wife all the time. So I know what they're doing. I let them borrow some of my extra phones when we go on vacation for taking pictures and videos, but in general, they don't have them at the house. They each have their own laptop. I got them both new laptops for Christmas. I got them ThinkPads. Exactly. This is a T490 ThinkPad I got a couple of years ago for myself. I probably paid like $300 for them. Think about these ThinkPads, and you've probably heard this before. They are amazing, and you can get them so cheap. You go on eBay. This laptop brand new is like over $1,000. I got my kids the same exact model, 16 gigs of RAM, 256 gig solid state hard drive, webcam, all that. They are great machines. I got them for around $100. I got one for just over $100 and one for $180, and theirs were the touchscreen models, so they were upgrade from mine. And they're a couple of years old, but they are great. Anyway, I lock their screens, and they only get on when I let them on. And they do watch a lot of YouTube videos, and we try to cut them back on that. The stuff they watch is probably appropriate, but I don't like how much they watch. But then also another thing they love Mind Test. Mind Test, and they'll buy Minecraft toys since there's no Mind Test toys. And but they love Mind Test, and they can just play it all day. And I think that's great. I wish they didn't play so much, but I'm on the computer a lot too, so I can't complain. But it's just, how do you keep them off it? Just don't let them on it. Don't let them use media. I mean, when they're teenagers, I guess that'll be a different thing. But at the same time, I don't know. I'll have to let you know after my kids go through their teens what I did. But I don't think they'll be making social media accounts. I mean, technically, both my kids have Google accounts and YouTube accounts. They don't really realize that. Just I created that just for an extra place to back up photos and videos. Like when we go on vacation and stuff, I want to be able to, all the random pictures, because they'll take thousands of pictures, snap, 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 snap. I want them to have that. So I do back that up to my service, but then I also back that up to their Google accounts. The only other reason they have that is my daughter likes to make music playlists on YouTube. And to make playlists, you have to be logged in. So they technically have Google accounts, but they don't really realize what that means. My kids are 8 and 11, by the way. Oh, my throat's getting sore. I won't be able to talk too much longer. Seriously, I think education information is the key. Have you ever tried to control your system using voice? Yes. It'd be cool to pretend to be... So, I do have... If I hit Windows V on my computer, it actually starts running Nerd Dictation, which is something I learned about through Arthur Reader. Again, check out Arthur Reader on YouTube. So I just hit Windows V and it will start. And that's one of those few applications that wasn't in the repositories. I had to install it using Snap Packs or something like that, and it was a pain in the butt. But I do have that, and I'll use that for typing. But that's for typing. A while back, I played around with... it was through Mozilla. There was a program that would run in the background and just basically pipe whatever you say, in the shell. So theoretically, I could use that and pipe it and then look for keywords and script. And in fact, yeah. So you could do that. I played around with it a little bit. I had for a while on my phone. Like I said, I control my lights through HTTP requests. So I made a web interface. And then I just used the voice to text on the phone into a text box, and it automatically, as it changed, would constantly, some JavaScript read that, and depending on what I said, it would send an HTTP request, and I could be able to say, living room lights on, living room lights off, and it would just look for keywords like living room, lights, on or off. And then I would say, let there be light, and it would turn on all the lights. So it's not that hard of a thing to do if you don't mind something running in the background all the time. But if you want to do it locally, again, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but like I said, Nerd Dictation is good for typing. But if you want something to run commands in the background, it was through Mozilla. Yeah, I can't remember. I remember it was a pain in the butt to set up too. The key to continuing to profit is what Minecraft used to do. They just continue involving the official release, or improving the official release. Many pirates eventually bought it. Then Microsoft bought it, so that sucks. Might be silly, but do you have any advice on how to get out of doing computer stuff for work? How to get out of doing computer stuff for work? Like you don't want to do it as a career, or that's not your career, but people are constantly asking you to do stuff. Because when I'm at work and people ask me, I just tell them no. As far as if you're looking to change careers, if I had advice, again, I'm 43 now. Yeah, I'm 43 now, just last month. If I had advice for younger people, right? When you're looking for a career, don't just think about pay. Think about, health benefits is important, but time off, that's one of the great things about being a firefighter. I work 24-hour shifts, and then I have 48 hours off. So I work 56 to 72 hours every week, right? Well, I'm sorry, 48 to 72, it averages out to 56 hours a week. And no, I don't get overtime for that. Anything beyond that, if I come in on an off shift, if they need help, that would be overtime. But all that's straight pay. But my schedule is very flexible, and sometimes it sounds better than it is in certain ways, and it's really not. Really, everything balances out. So, like sometimes, I like saying as a firefighter, right? So I work a day and then I have 2 days off, which means I work a day and I have 2 days off on each side, which means if I take 1 day off, I have 5 days off. Anytime I take 1 day off, I have 5 days off, which sounds great. But really, we don't take days off, we take hours off. So when I take a day off, I'm taking 24 hours off, which is like you taking 3 days off if you work an 8-hour shift. Well, if you take 3 days off and you butt it up against a weekend, you got 5 days off. So you can take Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. You could take Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday off, and you can stagger it like that. Me, at least, it's a little more flexible. But the downside of that also is, and if I was to go start working days, if I became an inspector or started working in the office, or like when I hurt my bicep and I was on light duty and I go to a regular 40-hour a week, I start getting less hours off because I'm working less hours. So it's all based on how many hours you work and how much time you get off. But the nice thing about my job is flexibility, but it's also constraining into, let's say I need time off. Now I can take sick time or personal time in smaller chunks. I never do that. There's a minimum. There used to be like no minimum on personal time, but then they made a minimum 8 hours. It might be 12 hours now. So if I need to take time off to take my kids somewhere, you need to take a day off from work, you burn 8 hours. If I need to take time off and it's later in the evening, and I don't want to, go to work, leave, come back, it's like I end up burning 24 hours. So that's a downside. Also, if you want to take a class or you have something weekly, well, every third week, let's say every Wednesday you want to do something. Well, every third week you're working Wednesday, which means you're going to miss a third of those things if you want to take a class or just be part of a group or something like that. So you either need to take time off, every 3 weeks to do that, or you're going to miss every third week. Like me and my wife used to be in a small group every Wednesday, or was it Wednesday we met? Yeah, Wednesday we met at church. Well, I missed every third one. Not the end of the world, but yeah, 1 out of 3 I missed. But my point is, going back to the question is, not really the question, but when you're looking at a career, look at personal time. When you're young, you should enjoy life as well as when you're older. So a job with flexible hours is a hard thing to find. So a job that offers you good time off is good. Some sort of retirement besides a 401k is important. If you do not have a job that gives you retirement, you need to be putting 20% of your pay aside from when you're 20 to when you're 60. Buy a house by the time you're 30, get it paid off by the time you're 60, and you should have enough money put aside to retire. That's my advice. Some people might think that sounds hard to do. You need to do it. A very minimum 10%. But if you really want to have a good retirement and your company's not offering, that means they're probably paying you more. Put 20% aside. That's advice as far as jobs. I really need to stop talking. My voice is killing me. But let's see. Sounds like a complicated schedule. My work schedule, not really. Like I said, it's every third day. If you take a calendar, you find a day that you're working. So let's say I work Friday this week. That means I work Tuesday, Friday. The next week I work the 2 days before that. So you can just take a calendar and draw a line diagonally, and you'll know what hours you work. And if you don't change shifts, which I've been on for 20 years, I've never changed shifts, I can tell you to the rest of my career what days I'm scheduled to work and what time I'm not. And you're always on that schedule unless you take time off. There's no like holidays. Like you might get off at other jobs for Christmas. If Christmas falls on my shift, I have to take a vacation day, and there's only so many people can be off. So, yeah, it's not complicated. It's flexible yet restricting. But it's nice that I can, in the middle of the week take time. Another big thing about a career, and this is huge, and it's one of those things that's kind of hard to balance, right? You want a job where you're important, but you're not the only one doing that. So if you're in a job where you're the only person that has that position and knows how to do it, you are very valuable and you will probably get paid pretty good. But I know people who have lots of people who have jobs like that. My father-in-law owns his own company. My sister-in-law is an accountant. And anytime they take off, if I go on vacation with them, they take time off. But when they get back, all that work piles up. And when they get back, they have to do all of that stuff. So then it's almost like they didn't have time off because now they're like doubling their work when they get back. But also, if you're easily replaceable, you're probably not going to get paid as well. And you can, you're probably not going to get paid as well. Balance there is good. Nice thing about being a firefighter is I am skilled. I had to go get certified and stuff like that. Not just anybody off the street can come and walk in. But no work builds up. When I'm gone, if a house catches fire or a car rolls over, they don't go, oh, wait, Chris isn't here. Let's wait till he gets back to put out this fire. So, yeah, things to think about. Do you have digital comms or analog FM? I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. I've actually been studying for a ham radio license. but I'm falling behind on the studies and I haven't taken the test. I was doing really good about studying before Christmas, but I haven't looked at it in 2 months or so. You're a big inspiration to me. Thank you. That means a lot to me. I do this to just share the knowledge that I have because, with the internet, things are a lot easier now. But when I was younger, computers were fun, but mysterious. It's. I wish I knew what I knew now. 20 years ago. So I'm just trying to share that because if you have a better starting point, you'll be able to surpass me at some point. That'd be great. Okay, I'm at the bottom of the list here. Listen, I'm not going to take any more questions. I'm going to end this in a minute, but I want to talk about something that I want to talk about. And I've been thinking about doing a video about this, so I might as well do it right now. Advertising, right? Brian Lunduke recently did a video on this, and I 100% agree with him, and I've been saying similar things for years. I'm not saying advertising overall is necessarily a bad thing. You need to let people know about your products. But most advertising is just mind control, right? And not just mind control, but just control in general. As Brian Lunduke talked about in his video, lots of companies, like especially big tech companies, take out advertisements on journalism websites, tech journalism websites, to make sure they don't say anything bad about them. They wine and dine. They take these reporters out and show them a good time so they won't report bad things about them. But I just don't trust any company that takes money from another company for advertising. This is true of news. Like, there's news channels. People are like, oh, that news channel lies all the time. I watch this news channel, or this channel lies all the time, and I watch this channel. I'm indifferent to that. They both are paid to tell you stuff. I don't trust a thing they say, okay? I do not trust advertising, companies that take advertising and then try to tell you what to think. Chris, you might say, you have advertising on your videos. That's true. I do not know what any of the advertisements are. I just click a button. I actually just check all the buttons in the YouTube thing saying I want all this advertising because I hope to make a little bit of money. I make about $100 a month on my videos. It's not life-changing, but I don't know who's advertising. And I also just assume that most people who watch my videos don't watch the advertising. They use ad blockers or stream it using some other player. I also think that advertising for the most part is not needed nowadays. I'm not saying it's completely unneeded or bad, but nowadays with the internet, it's very easy to spread the word about your product by, making a good product. If you make a good product, people will talk about it online. Now, that being said, I want to point out something. Where I live in Collier County, and one of the things about Collier County I used to think was weird when I was younger, but I so appreciate now that I'm older and truly appreciate it. And different places are different. So I'm not saying this is good for everywhere. It's illegal to have billboards in my county. It's true. There actually are 3 billboards in town. I would assume they've been there since I moved here over 30 years ago. I'm assuming they're grandfathered in. But on the interstate, there's no billboards. In town, besides those 3, there are no billboards. You can't have tall signs. Like when you go by these exits, a lot of places, there's gas stations, there's huge towering signs. You're not allowed to have that. They're very restrictive on what signs, even if you have a shopping center, how tall the sign can be and how it looks. And again, that's not for everywhere. You go to Orlando, you go to Pigeon Forge by Gatlinburg, or you go out to Nevada to Las Vegas. It's like you go to those places for big flashy lights. I'm really glad that I don't have that where I live. But when I travel and I go on road trips and I drive through towns, it's like there are billboards everywhere and it just looks horrible. And almost all of them are just for these scam lawyers, and it's really unnecessary because my point here in being that the businesses here in town still do well. They still make lots of money. It's a fairly, good place to run a business. There's a lot of money here. And it's not like, oh, we don't have billboards. People aren't buying stuff. It doesn't work like that. So really, the billboards are really unnecessary. And I bring that up just because, in general, advertising these days is really unnecessary as far as getting word out there for your product. And the main reason to do it is just to put it in your face. I don't watch commercials. I don't watch regular TV. I stream everything offline, and I don't use any services that put ads in my face. And you know what? When I want to buy something, I still know where to go. And And yeah, when I go to work, sometimes the TV will be on and there'll be news. And when the commercials come on, they all seem like scams. But so many people don't see it like that because they're bombarded with these ads every single day. It's like, how many commercials tell you install our app? For what? Most of the time, these apps, there's no reason to be installing their apps. They can be done through a web page, filling out forms. These apps, you want to check weather? It's like, first of all, there's probably already a weather icon on our applet widget on your phone, but you could just put a link to a website and see the weather. You don't need an extra app for that. Most applications people install on their devices is unnecessary, and all these commercials are just trying to get into your device. They're trying to track you, see what you're doing, and just influence you. Advertising is evil in most cases. Again, not all, but most. So yeah, I just wanted to say that I do not trust anybody who's trying to share information with me that's advertising to me. So that is it. I do thank you for watching. And as always, I hope that you have a great day.